Well, my friends, these past 3 weeks we have heard 3 of the longest gospel passages that we will ever have the privilege of hearing at Mass, except, of course, for the Passion. 2 weeks ago, we heard about the woman at the well. Last week, the man born blind. And today, the raising of Lazarus. You know, in its wisdom, the Church strings these long gospel passages together on 3 consecutive Sundays in Lent. And that should tell us something, my friends. A woman goes to a well to quench her thirst, leaving there with so much more than she could ever have imagined. And she is never, ever the same again. A man born blind has sight given to him by a man he does not even know. And he is never, ever the same again. And a man walks out from a tomb in complete disbelief at what had happened, shocked that it was his dear friend who had brought it about. And he is never, ever the same again. Now, at the heart of each of these stories is something rather simple, yet life-changing. The one element in each of these stories is an encounter with Jesus Christ that changes everything. For the woman at the well, this happens through a very profound conversation. For the blind man, this happens through the healing touch of a stranger. And for the dead man, this happens through the command of a dear friend, Lazarus, come out. These 3 unique encounters with Jesus, and yet the outcome is the same. Individuals being changed in ways that they could not even imagine, defying any explanation other than being from God. So in their own unique way, each one ended the day much different from the way they started it. Everything was new. Everything was full of hope and new possibilities. And my friends, that is what is at the heart of Lent. That is what Lent is all about. Lent is not about beating ourselves up. It's not about doing every single devotion perfectly right. It certainly is not about proving to others or ourselves that we have the willpower to give something up. Rather, Lent is about coming out of these 40 days, that is, waking up on Easter morning, changed forever. And not because of our own goodness or through our power or our efforts, but changed through the power of our merciful, compassionate, and loving God, who wants nothing more than to change us, not for a day, but forever. Now, I think sometimes we fall back on the idea that God can do whatever God wants to do. And that is difficult to argue with, because God has all the power. God has all the wisdom. God knows everything. Whether we acknowledge it or not, God is in charge. And God's way is always the very best way. And yet, there's always a yet, isn't there, my friends? And yet God gives us true freedom, a very precious gift. And that means our loving God will never, ever force himself upon us. The choice is completely ours. We can accept God's amazing grace or not. We can be open to God's mercy and love or not. Be new creations or be the very same old people that we were yesterday. None of that comes about until we're willing to say yes to every good thing that God wants for us. Willing to embrace a new way of thinking and seeing and acting. And that, my friends, that takes an encounter with Jesus Christ. That takes really conversing with him, listening to his voice, responding to it in faith, allowing him to touch our minds, our hearts, our souls. And the practices of Lent, prayer and almsgiving, fasting, can help us to do precisely that. The journey of these 40 days can lead to us to where we truly need to be, if we let it, if we let him. You know, the truth is, when we hear Jesus calling Lazarus to come out, we need to also hear him saying to us, calling us out of our tomb as well, calling us out from the darkness of our selfishness, our resentments, our prejudices, our hate, the darkness of our grudges and desire for revenge, the darkness of our sin. My friends, may never being the same again not only be the ending of the story of the woman at the well, the story of the blind man, the story of Lazarus. May it also be the ending of each of our stories today and every day of our lives.